Welcome our next panel, which is on inclusivity in marketing. The session chair of this panel is going to be Sindhu Janardhan, Senior Creative Director, Interactive Venues. Vikas Bansi is going to be our first panelist, who is the business head of OTC Himalaya Wellness Company. Ashok Vidyasagar, segment leader, DPI EY. Puja Bedi, head brand marketing, Wow Skin Science. And Mohammed Shahbaaz, brand marketing head, Sport. And I will not welcome this panel unless we have a thunderous loud applause. Come on, everybody.
Hello, everyone. It's truly a privilege to be here. We have brilliant minds from very different industries, and I'm really excited to know their point of view when it comes to this topic, which is very close to my heart, inclusivity in marketing. Let's get into the topic right away, right? Inclusivity and diversity are very important, topics right now in the marketing community, right? And I think as marketers, we have already stepped in the right direction in creating a habit, being aware of inclusivity, and also implementing them in our campaigns, right? So let's start with a very basic question, which is, I think we all have been in this industry for quite a while now. This was not really a very important topic about 10 years ago, right? But right now it is. So what has changed? And why should marketers today adopt inclusivity in everything that they are doing, whether it's their marketing campaigns or even while choosing their teams, right? Mostly about marketing, since this discussion is about that. This question is open to all, so whoever wants to pick it up first.
Hi everyone. Working? Check. Okay, I think like you rightly said, 10 years ago or even 5-7 years ago, I think this was not really the, am I audible behind? No. Yeah. I thought as well. Hello, better? Okay, great, thanks. So I think about 5-6 years ago, I would say not just 10, but I think this is picked up more in the last 4-5 years, and especially post-COVID. Right? I mean, a lot of things on technology, on diversity, inclusivity, I think we are getting there as a generation. So fair point, why is it important? I think let's start with the commercial aspect first, right? Because as marketers, I'm sure a lot of things would say, okay, but how does it make sense commercially, and is this feasible? There is a Kantar study that goes out straight to say all marketing campaigns, right, that are progressive, that promote inclusivity, diversity, or even reach in terms of overall connect with audiences better, are straight 25% more effective, right? In terms of, so that's where you get a lot of inspiration as well, because this is commercially going to work. Of course, it is the right thing to do because globally, if you look at and let's talk of even just representation. You look at all big brands consistently, one after the other. They are being more and more inclusive. They are taking care of representation, not only just global brands. I think India, you look at a lot of government sites, you look at a lot of union health, and everyone is trying to just make sure that inclusivity, diversity, or even reach is maximized to as many as possible. So that's my 2 cents on why this is important, what has really changed. I think COVID has really accentuated a lot of things in terms of data and technology. So companies now, brands now don't want to be left behind on ensuring that they are well connected with the target audience, and the audience, irrespective of which background or which class, creed, etc. they come from, they feel engaged and connected, and that does ensure you of much greater retention, right? So as a marketer, it works on both ends of the spectrum. Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, just to add to that, I think for me, 2-3 factors have contributed to it. One is that brands have also become larger, so they're able to take on agendas that are bigger than just a functional objective. The other part is the rise of social media has allowed us to listen to consumers' voice more democratically. I think a lot of advertising that we see, of course, the best of the brands, they do a lot of consumer work to really represent the consumer in the right way. But there are many brands that don't do that kind of work. So you would not see that kind of representation in those kind of advertising. The other thing is slightly contra, which is, I think 10 years ago, marketing saw consumers from a perspective of, hey, this is my brand's consumer. I think that's now evolved to saying the consumer has many facets. So instead of defining the consumer as just one persona that is defined there for you and just a buyer from your, or just a wallet that you can take a share from, there are many aspects to a consumer. So therefore, segmenting a consumer just demographically no longer made sense. So now you see a different aspect of people. So for example, let's take sports, right? You might say, oh, sports was for men, but women play sports, right? And maybe it's not the same attribute of sports that they look for, but they are also participants in that. So therefore, you represent them better. So I think that philosophy in marketing has also changed, and therefore we start seeing these conversations go better now. Yeah.
Hi, so I'm Puja, and I work with a startup called Wow Skin Science. And given this topic that's here, so I actually wanted to share a few thoughts and something that we also as an insurgent brand do. So typically, like how Shahbaaz was saying, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it was largely mass media. There was a brand that would talk about certain things. I have an XYZ product and the consumer sees it. I don't know what they understand. It's left to a consumer's perception what the brand wants to say. But with the emergence of a lot of startups, D2C brands, and the rise of performance marketing and social media, we now are very close to the consumer. We understand what they are thinking, and that not everything fits everybody. So I think we're also closer to the consumer in so many ways. Like as a personal care startup, we understood that not all hair types in the country are similar, or not all skin types are similar. So we have products which are tailored to a certain geography where there is humidity, or let's say Bangalore as a place is known for its hard water, right? So there are products that address to such nuances basically. And coming to marketing also, we as a company also don't feel that everything will resonate right with the 25-year-old versus a 40-year-old. So there are different kind of content that everybody consumes. So I think when it comes to diversity with respect to cultures, age groups, and India being such a diverse country with so many people, so many younger in the young millennial population, I think with a lot of startups and the FMC traditional companies also now taking that route, I think we are in the right step. But yeah, there's a lot to be done. But I think, like Shahbaaz was also mentioning, we are working towards that, and I think that's helping a lot, especially with social media and a lot of creators that are coming into the space. So yeah, I think that's from me.
Thank you. So my name is Ashok Vidyasagar, and I come from EY. We are a 1 lakh plus in India and about 3.5 lakhs across the globe. One of the first things that the company has done is to bring out gender equality. So we are almost at 48 to 52 as men, women within the company. Now, even within that, we do have a lot of, normally companies would refrain from taking people from that sect. Like we have fair amount of LGBT representation within our staff. Now, I personally had met someone within the Bangalore office. It was such a touching story, such a brilliant girl, but falls under the category of LGBT. And what she told me is that we have such huge difficulties because we fall into a sect called LGBT, from availing rental homes, from availing facilities at banks. So, there are a lot of difficulties. Now, coming to the differentiation that we see in the market today, when you compare it with, let's say, 10 years back, I think the biggest thing that has happened is, I had to put this down on a piece of paper because I didn't want to miss any point. I think the biggest thing is about changing demographics in India. We have almost 50% of our, or 58% of our country being represented by people who are 25 plus or below the age of 25. Gen Z is actually dictating a lot of inclusivity. They care two hoots about casteism and the breakdowns which our society has brought in. The second thing is that I think there's been huge consumer awareness thanks to the advent of internet, thanks to the advent of technology. I think the awareness levels have gone up substantially, which itself is a big leveler. I mean, learning and growth is a big leveler in companies. Same is the case with society. The third thing is that I think the rise of social media makes it another important aspect for where we are today in form of inclusion. I think it has given people a lot of freedom to write and express what they want on social media, which makes it pretty inclusive for a lot of people. I just get onto Facebook or I get onto LinkedIn. I mean, you just come across as any other human being who is there on the planet. There's a huge economic impact. I think the new dimension is all about globalization. India is sending out goods from here to other parts of the world, whether it's US, whether it's Middle East, whether it's European markets. I think if you don't talk the language of inclusion, we are going to lose out. We as a nation will lose out there. I think there is social responsibility for brands, which I think is amply being demonstrated, but we are still not there. I think broadly these are the points that I would like to make before I pass on to the mic.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I think somehow all of you kind of brought in the topic of social media, right? And when it comes to social media, I think the next point of discussion is representation, right? True representation when it comes to whether it's our campaigns or anything for that matter. Now this question is for you, Ashok. How do you think we can unlock the true power of inclusion with true representation? And true representation not just when it comes to the final ad or the final campaign, right? Right from building insights for it, or you're choosing the channel for that campaign, right? Or you're briefing the production process, right? How do you kind of bring in inclusion into all of that?
See, my answer to this is, I've been in brand management and advertising for almost 17 years of my life, the first part of my career. I moved into broadcast content and then eventually into consulting. In my first part of my career, what I could see is that marketeers, I think, need to have the will to first engage in inclusive advertising or inclusive marketing. They are caught between the $100 they have as advertisers, which is the marketing budget, and caught between chasing the ROI that management demands of them. So I think the first and foremost thing is to ensure that marketeers develop the will and the balls to actually drive inclusivity into their campaign. The second thing I think marketeers need to do, today when you get into audience research, today what they do is they tap into one segment, do 5 or 6 group interviews, Conti, and then they get into the act of creating campaigns. Now, do they know that there are audiences beyond their articulated audiences? Okay, male, female, 25 plus. The lady is called Reena Gupta and she wears bindi, wears sari. That's the traditional definition. But there are definitions outside of that pocket which needs to be identified. That will only happen when there is inclusion even in the teams which are working towards campaign building. Cultural sensitivity is something which is overlooked by marketeers. I think they paint everyone with the same brush, how much ever they try. I think identifying definite packets of cultural sensitivity is very important. Inclusive language. I think we are a country with about at least 50 languages, if I would say. It's not just the 26, 27 states that we have. I think language is a great leveler. I remember Bajaj doing a campaign. Bajaj has the Bajaj Chetak, found its audiences in hinterland. They had a website in English. They used generative AI to actually convert that English website into 11 different languages because audiences felt alienated with English literature. It makes such a difference. I think today storytelling has a role to play. And I think there are brilliant stories in languages. You look at Hollywood, you look at language movie, if you look at Bengali movies, look at Malayali movies, absolutely brilliant output from them. Societal issues are being tackled. Also, marketers need to have feedback and learning from feedback that they get to tinker with their campaigns. So these are the points that I would like to make.
Yes, thank you, Ashok. Well said. I think a lot of points that you have touched upon. I think when it comes to true representation, right, and also you touched upon languages, how we use generative AI today to do this. I think one point is there which is not really spoken about or looked into much, right? This next question is for you, Vikas, which is about accessibility, right? While we may have different languages, and that is also an important part of inclusivity, is everyone able to access this, right? How much are brands or marketers focusing on accessible product or, designing it in that way so that a person with a disability, right, can also, experience it the same way that everyone else is doing, right? Or, website compatibility when it comes to screen readers, right? So how far do you think we have come when it comes to creating accessible products?
Well, I think, so have we really made some progress in the last few years? Answer is yes, but I'll start with some data point which is not so good to hear, and that's that 97% of internet is still not accessible as far as, if we were to look at disability or we were to look at other aspects of representation. So 97% of internet is still not there. Having said that, I think we have covered some ground. If you look at the most accessible app in India today, it's WhatsApp, right? And I think they've done a great job on ensuring that accessibility is just not the thing to drive, more so to be inclusive, but also it's a norm. If you look at every upgrade they do, if you look at every product or service they upgrade, they take care of that part of it, right? Having said that, today if you look at, let's just start, since you're talking about representation, 70 million people who are specially abled in India, 75% of them in rural India, right? Lack of keyboard accessibility is still the single biggest issue on representation, right? So the question is, how do we as marketers, how do brands or how do campaigns become more and more accessible as far as the campaign strategy is concerned, or whether it's an app or whether it's a website? I think some do's and don'ts. One part is that test your audiences. And you have to go beyond, like we discussed, beyond the conventional audiences that you have. You have to go and test it out in different channels. You have to go and test it out and see. Simple thing. Is your campaign really, can it be customized on different devices? There are brands that miss out such a simple aspect of it, right? And it's not because of purely lack of intent, right? A lot of times the intent is there, but like we discussed, at the end of the day, you want to look at how much budget you have, how much output can you get, and hence, at best, I've seen some brands do maybe 1 out of 10 campaigns or 2 out of 10 at best, right? But there are brands which have really done justice to being far more, inclusive, being far more representative, right? And we'll talk about it a little later. But I think basic things like ensuring that there is accessibility across devices, having captions, alt tab text, having contrast colors. These are just very basic things which as marketers we need to kind of very humbly accept and learn. And that's why I gave the example of WhatsApp, because I think it's a great example of how it addresses representation with every single upgrade, that it does.
Yes, totally. I think budget is a very important part of our discussion today. I think that topic is for another discussion. The time is not going to be enough. However, talking about inclusion, I think Puja also spoke about the product, that you have, the products that you have, the brand that you're handling, and how I'm sure for scaling business you have to get into new markets, right, new audiences. And today I think it's very important, instead of having like a blanket strategy, you need to understand that audience, right? You need to understand their customs, their values, their beliefs, in order to connect more deeply with them, right? So which means every marketer should have like culture sensitivity at the back of their heads when they're designing campaigns, right? So do you have any tips? I'm sure you have done this. Do you have any tips in terms of how every marketer should kind of approach this, and what are some of the things they should definitely do?
Sure. Thanks, Sindhu. So yeah, like you said, we do a lot of stuff around product launches or new campaigns, which are, if not centered, but made keeping in mind the different cultural sensitivities that there are. And like you said, we do meet a lot of consumers. Actually, consumer is at the heart of everything that we do. And we have a very robust customer support team, as we call it, which is always in touch with the consumers. And as a practice, anybody who joins the company, be it marketing, be it sales, be it operations, everybody is made to talk to at least 10 to 20 consumers in the first week that they join, just to understand why are they using the product, what is it that made them start using a new brand. Because it doesn't happen every day that a brand comes and appears on Instagram and people start clicking on it and buying it. And surprisingly, we've had great responses across marketplaces with products more than 30,000 reviews and ratings. So yeah, we wanted to know like what is it that people are liking it. And without talking to your consumers, I think it's not right to actually design a strategy. And it's not valid for another team also in the company to understand, why a marketing person is saying what they are saying. So yeah, we have consumers from across the country. There'll be a 30-year-old girl sitting in a metro in Delhi and using an onion oil, whereas there'll be a similar kind of onion oil user, but sitting in a Tamil Nadu. And they both would be using it for different reasons. So that has helped us actually, like you said, budgets. So being in a startup, budgets have not always come in handy. And with the limited budgets that we've had, we've chosen certain channels of advertising also. Because again, mass media is not something that you can do on a daily basis. We cannot be on air 52 weeks. So we have to choose our platforms accordingly. And like I mentioned previously also, performance marketing, while it's reaching one consumer at a time, it's also helping us reach to a much diverse audience, because you can pinpoint it to the pin code and see what that person is consuming, whether that person is interested in a fashion or a beauty or travel, and you can accordingly customize your marketing campaign around that person. For an example, let's say somebody has a hair fall problem because she constantly travels a lot. That's a 25-year-old girl. Whereas a 40-year-old housewife who's sitting at home but doing a lot of household activities. She does not have time to take care of her hair and still is facing hair fall. So both of them are facing hair falls, but the reasons of why they're facing hair falls, maybe it is improper nutrition. So you can go up to that granularity, you can define cohorts, and then you can create marketing campaigns according to that. And feedback, like we were discussing previously, feedback is also easier. You can immediately call up your consumer. Having D2C websites, I think, is a boon because you know who is your consumer, and you can call up that person and understand whether they've liked it, whether they've not liked it. And oftentimes we've made changes to the existing product, because being a company which started selling non-sulfate shampoos. So traditionally, cleansers in India are something which always used to froth a lot. And to have that education instilled in the audiences, because we would get calls, ki, hum ye laga rahe hain, but isse jhaag nahi ban raha hai. So even that granularity, you get somebody from an R&D team to talk to, sit in on those calls and explain to them on how exactly do you use it, how much water should you use. So it's been a long journey, it's taken a lot of effort, but I think we are there. We're not there yet, but we're reaching there one step at a time. And I think in a way, this is inclusivity, where you are tailoring your products, your offerings, also adding to the hair. Like India has always been a straight hair, wavy hair market, but if you talk to the Gen Zs of today or the young millennials, they'll talk a lot about curly girl movement, right? So, and people find it very difficult to actually have access to products, and if they are, they're very expensive because they're imported. So launching products which are specifically tailored to that particular hair type. I think we've been doing such work, and I'm happy that people are appreciating it, and that would be my advice to people, to actually go talk to the consumer. I think the amount of knowledge that you can get just by spending 30 minutes or 1 hour every day talking to the consumer or going through the reviews on Amazon on why a person is on Amazon, Flipkart, any of the marketplaces. So yeah, I think that would be my advice, to actually talk to the consumer, understand why they are doing what they're doing, why they're using what they're using, and then tailor-make the offerings for them.
Yeah, great points, Pooja. I think the hair fall conversation truly hit home. Any other thoughts on culture sensitive, culture sensitivity, or how?
I'll just add to that and probably address also what Ashok was mentioning in terms of the traditional way of segmenting the market, also traditional ways of consumer research. In my view, I think the ways are fine. We don't do it right. Often we get wrong. We say, oh, let me take cult's example. Okay, this is a cult member or a cult consumer. It's not. You are a part of the consumer's life. The consumer is not your own to take home and say this is my consumer as such. So I think first level, have that humility to understand that you play a role in the consumer's life, which means that when you are trying to find insights about culture or usage or behaviors, try and find genuine insights. And I'll give an example on it. I mean, people in the room, anyone, if I ask that if is daag अच्छे हैं, a good insight, right? कुछ अच्छा करने के लिए अगर दाग लग जाए तो दाग अच्छे हैं. I think most of the people will resonate, right, with that. Now, the fact is that's not even an Indian insight. The core insight was, I think it was done in the London office and the key statement was called dirt is good. That was the key call to action. So when you have a genuine insight, it's actually inclusive by its own nature. So if you don't have that, then you have to be aware as a marketer that what you have is an observation. It's probably not an insight in the first place, right? So I think that kind of deep work is what is required so that then you can touch a lot more people. And across various product categories, I think there are various aspects to people which you will resonate with. You need not look at them only as demographics, but look at them as a spectrum, and what part of that spectrum can you address.
Yeah, so you're saying when you go deep enough, maybe a behavior is common across people.
Yeah, if the insight is a really strong insight, will resonate with a lot more people than just what you define as your TG.
That's true. So when we talk about even diversity, right, like you said, there is socio-economic factors, or there is age, or there is, different things that we look at, geos, right? But I think one critical differentiator that we have here is the language we speak, right? Ashok also, I think, briefly touched upon how language is important. And today, he also mentioned about generative AI changing the language on a website, right? And I even know of an AI platform that will actually, if you shoot a film in Hindi, they will, without anything, they're going to change the language to different languages. A lot of them are using it right now, right? But I think what is more important is more than changing the language, it's about understanding the regional nuances, right? Instead of just changing a language, because it might still look like a Hindi ad. It's just, he's just singing in Tamil, right? It just,
correct.
Sometimes it doesn't make sense, right? So understanding the regional nuances is very important. But also we have our enemy, which is the budget. We have been talking about, like, how many ads can one make, or how many campaigns can one craft, right? But what do you really think about the localization when it comes to campaigns, right? Are we doing it right? Or, what is your...
I think at a broad scale, we don't do it right as a marketing community. But just coming back to your point, firstly, I think language is very baseline. You don't get that right, I think you don't have a right to play. So these are like table stakes, such that you don't, and this was one of the things that I discussed very early in my career. I was speaking to someone in the research team, and we were talking about, hey, can we run this ad in Hindi in West Bengal? Like, people understand Hindi there, so it's fine to run this. And the person said, yes, they will understand, and they will not like you. That's the nature of it, right? So, and anyone who wants to think about it, think of it this way. Let's say you are interested in a person, right? A love interest or a significant other. Try and talk to them in a language that they don't speak, that's not their first language, and then try and get them interested in you. And then think that as a brand, why would someone be interested in you if you're not speaking the language that they think in, right? Not just the language that they speak.
But again, if you go back 10 years, you know, there was always one ad, right? There was one Hindi TVC, right? And there were Hindi slogans, Hindi taglines. And that was run across, right, across the country.
That's a function of, I think, how, what Ashok also mentioned, the lack of representation within the marketing community. And in a lot of places this happens, right? You start thinking of an ad in Hindi, then you say, how will I translate it into Malayalam or Tamil, right? Instead of working with the people who are in Tamil Nadu and then developing it with that nuance and with that insight. And that, I think, is progressively changing over a period of time. But yeah, that used to be the issue earlier. I think in my career, at least once, there has been a phase where we believed our insight is fairly strong, so will resonate. But the execution came out to be in a manner that it made sense in Hindi, but there is no equivalence to it in Telugu and Tamil. So then what do you run? So you don't run it. You find a different execution, right? So that, I think, has evolved quite a lot since, I guess when I started. So that changes happened to quite a lot degree.
Yeah, sure.
To what he said, I think it's also pertinent to know that there's been huge amount of media fragmentation. 15 years back, I remember I started with campaigns around TV, radio, print, and could be posters for retail. But the complexity of media has changed. The nature of creative touch points have changed. The way the consumer is consuming it also has changed, right?
Yeah, so, yes, Vikas.
Well, I think one aspect to it is, and we spoke about it, but social listening has, is the in thing now. And I think a lot of marketers I see who've built some great campaigns, right, is on the back of social media and social listening, right? The same campaign, 10 years ago, conventional campaign today gets, beaten to death, black and blue, right? And as marketers, we learn that, and we learn it via social listening, that some things which were accepted as norm or which were really showed as okay are today not okay from multiple angles, right? Diversity, inclusion, language, cultural sensitivity, and so on. So I think one thing that as marketers, we really need to be sensitive. So whether it is, I think Puja mentioned about reviews. I think whether it is reading your reviews on your product, whether it is understanding what your brand is being spoken about on, and that's what social media was alluding to. I think that aspect also brings in a lot more sensitivity to understanding what could be possible barriers towards not having an inclusive, successful campaign. Yeah.
Right. I think so as marketers, I think we are all on the same page. It is just that I think from baby steps now we need to probably take bigger steps to reaching there faster, right? And I'm sure we will. We have a lot of insights, I think, from this discussion that we can implement ourselves as we go back to our respective jobs. Just to make the session a little interesting as we are ending this, there is a rapid fire round. So I will quickly be asking you all one thing, right? One must do when it comes to inclusion. And you all have to quickly tell me one brand that according to you has done it really well. Okay, so first one to Vikas. We'll go in this order. Equality of representation.
I think I would say brands that have done well, Dove, Coke, I would say Nike. I think they keep doing it again and again. One example on a lighter note, we could sit here and find the lighter side of it. Geo cricket commentary in Bhojpuri. I mean, that's a great example of language inclusivity. I mean, you could sit and laugh about it because you find it funny, but imagine the people who can relate to it back there. I think that's a great example that I can talk about. And then perhaps a good starting point for us as marketers to get serious about, inclusivity and understanding how to go about it.
Right. Accessible design, Ashok. Okay, this is supposed to be rapid fire. Huh?
Sorry?
This is supposed to be rapid fire.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, then let me fire away. I think Titan Raga has a range of commercials Now, what they did was they actually, I'm talking about accessibility through tech. I'm not talking about campaign and advertising. I think they've got a watch where even blind men can actually, the blind can read it because it's braille enabled. And there is something around tactile marking on the watch. The second one, I think, is about Google Internet Sathi, where Google has actually enabled, literacy at class C, D, E towns through an tech enablement and internet enablement for women in lower pop strata.
Right.
The third one I can think of is Spotify. I think Spotify has also brought about a light version where it has got people who have got poor connectivity to actually use the lighter version to include a whole lot of people. I think even we people in cities are suffering from Airtel, which has such poor internet connectivity. These are three I can think of.
Yeah, I think accessible design, one thing we should all keep in mind is I think it's not about one campaign or one product, right? How can brands do it? Because it's not that the person is going to see it only once, right? That's their life. It's consistency. I think consistency matters. Yeah, next is for Puja, language diversity.
I will keep it very quick because I can see it on your face that it's rapid fire and I only need to say
I would
one.
love to continue this discussion, I think the whole day. So.
Yeah, so I was thinking about it. I had a couple of names, but to top it off, I think most of us would have seen a recent campaign that Britannia had done with their Milbikis biscuit. So it's been there in Tamil Nadu, one of the most, I read on the campaign overview that they were saying 1 out of every 5 biscuits is Milbikis that they purchase, and they had done it as a gratitude campaign. So to have a campaign specifically designed for that state and celebrating the 50 plus dialects that are spoken in that particular state, I think that was very beautifully done, because a lot of times, intentionally, mostly unintentionally, brands brands do make campaigns which are more Hindi centric and then they're just translated. So I think having a campaign created in that particular language, I think brands are moving from simply translating, localizing the main campaign to transcreating. I think we are also taking that learning and creating specific master campaigns tailored to that area, that region if possible. Like Shahbaaz was also mentioning, in a lot of insights we've seen, like Bengal as a market really loves when you do something in Bengali, even if they understand Hindi. So yeah, like targeting markets like a Bengal or a Tamil Nadu with such specific campaigns, I think, yeah, Milbikis is topping the chart for me for now. So yeah, that's from me.
Cultural sensitivity, Shahbaaz.
Spotify, Red Label, Surf Excel.
Oh, you have truly kept it rapid fire. I know, the only person who stuck to the brief. Okay, thank you so much. I think it was a very insightful session, and thank you for listening.